Hello, boys and girls. My name is Latina Gayton. I teach third grade math at Roy Neal Shelley Elementary School. Today, I'm going to give you an introduction on polygons. Let's jump right in. So, as you can see, the name of my presentation is Introduction to Polygons, okay? So, let's look at our objectives. So, I always tell my students our objectives tell us what we're supposed to learn today. So we never want to leave the classroom feeling like we haven't learned something or come out with a better understanding of something that we've done before, okay? So our objective, what we want to learn today is we want to learn how to identify polygons, okay? So when we talk about identifying, we want to find, okay? We want to know if it's a polygon or not a polygon, okay? So let's look at some definitions. So I have some vocabulary for you guys. A polygon is a flat, closed figure with straight lines. Would we consider these polygons? Now, let's remember what a polygon is. A polygon is a figure with straight lines. It's flat and it's closed. So let's look at this first one, you guys. Now, what I have here, I have a shape, and I see some straight lines, but then I see this curved line. Will we consider this shape a polygon? No. This would not be a polygon because it has a curved line in it, okay? So if it has a curved line, we can't consider it a polygon. What about this shape, you guys? Will we consider this a polygon? Well, let's go back to our definition. A polygon is a flat, closed figure. What's wrong with this one? That's correct. It's not closed, you guys. It's not enclosed. So this is not a polygon either. What about this triangle here? It's flat, it's closed, and it's made up of straight lines. So this triangle is a polygon. So remember, a polygon is flat, it's closed, and it's made up of straight lines. So this one wasn't a polygon because it has a curved line. This one wasn't a polygon because it's not closed. This is a polygon because it's flat, it's closed, and it's made up of straight lines, okay? Let's move on. Now, how do we classify polygons? Now, when we're talking about classifying something, we're talking about putting it into a group. So when we're talking about polygons, we're talking about, first we have to find out whether it's a polygon or not a polygon, and then we start talking about what type of polygon it is, okay? So polygons are classified and described by the number of sides and angles they have, okay? Polygons with equal sides and equal angles are called regular polygons. Angles, now, I know you know what a side is, so I put a special note about what an angle is. What an angle is, it's where the lines actually meet to close the shape. That's what an angle is. So we count the sides of the shape and we count the angles, and that tells us what kind of polygon we have, okay? Today we're going to talk about two types of polygons. We're going to talk about triangles and quadrilaterals, all right? So let's get into our triangle first. So we've all seen a triangle. We start seeing shapes when we are very young. This is probably one of the first shapes we've ever seen. Now, what we want to call it, we don't want to call it a shape. We want to call it a polygon because it's flat and it's closed, all right? Now, how do we know that this is a triangle? Well, a triangle has 3 sides and 3 angles. Let's count them, you guys. 1, 2, 3. So those are the sides. And remember, we talked about the angles also. The angles are the points in which the lines meet to close the figure. So here's an angle, here's an angle, and here's an angle. So as you can see, we have 3 sides and 3 angles. It is called a triangle. We know that one. That's pretty easy, right? Now, here's where it gets a little different with the quadrilaterals, okay? With the quadrilaterals, you have different types of quadrilaterals. Quadrilaterals have 4 sides and 4 angles, and there are many different types of quadrilaterals, okay? One thing I always tell my students is the more regular the quadrilateral gets, then it gets a different name. And you'll see what I'm talking about as I go through the slides, okay? So the very basic quadrilateral is called a trapezoid, class. Can you say trapezoid? Go ahead and try. All right, you guys. So as you can see, when we're talking about a quadrilateral, we're talking about a flat closed figure with 4 sides and 4 angles. Now, what would classify this as a trapezoid? Well, the only special thing about a trapezoid is it has 1 pair of parallel lines. When I'm talking about parallel, I'm talking about lines that if we were to continue those lines, they would never cross. So we know that we have 4 sides in this trapezoid, okay? So if we look at the lines, if we were to continue the top line and the bottom line, we will see that these lines will never cross no matter how far they go. Now, if we look at the left and the right, if we were to continue these sides, they would eventually cross at the bottom, which means they would intersect and they're not parallel. So a lot of times kids want to tell me, oh, there are 2 parallel lines. No, we count them as a pair. So this is only 1 parallel line, which is the top and the bottom. So this is the very basic quadrilateral. It has 4 sides, 4 angles, and 1 pair of parallel lines. Then we have what we call a parallelogram. And you actually see the word parallel in a parallelogram, okay? So remember how the trapezoid had 1 pair of parallel lines. Well, the parallelogram has 2 pairs of parallel lines, okay? So not only is it a quadrilateral, which means 4 sides and 4 angles, it also has 2 pairs of parallel lines. Opposite sides are parallel. Now, when we're talking about opposite, we're talking about the sides that are right across from each other, all right? We're not talking about the sides that meet to make an angle. We're talking about the ones that are on the left and the right, the top and the bottom. Now, I know a lot of y'all are looking at that like, well, these lines are slanted. Yes, they can be slanted. They just can't be bendy and curvy. They can be slanted because if you were to take a ruler and put them on the sides of them, those would never meet, you guys. Even the ones at the top and bottom would never meet, okay? So this is called a parallelogram. So far we went over the trapezoid and the parallelogram. Now we're going to move on to the rhombus. So whenever I ask my students what's this called, they always want to tell me a diamond. And I always tell them, no, it's not a diamond, it is a rhombus, okay? That's the proper name for it, all right? So this is a rhombus and it's a quadrilateral. Remember what quadrilateral means. You actually see the word quad in quadrilateral. And quad means 4, okay? So that means it has 4 sides and 4 angles. Now let's see what you have to be a rhombus, okay? All the side lengths are equal in a rhombus, okay? And opposite sides are parallel. So the rhombus is different from the parallelogram and the trapezoid because in the trapezoid and the parallelogram, all sides don't have to be equal, okay? They just have to be, in a trapezoid, one pair has to be parallel. In a parallelogram, 2 pairs have to be parallel. But in the rhombus, you need 2 pairs of parallel lines and all your sides have to be the same length. Now, we're going to go over, a lot of times my students say, well, it kind of looks like a square. It does, and it's almost like a square, but we're going to see why a rhombus is not a square, okay? Now here's the quadrilateral that you're one of the quadrilaterals that you're most familiar with, okay? This is a rectangle, all right? So remember, we're talking about quadrilateral. What does quadrilateral mean? You should know it by now. I've said it so many times. All right, remember the word quad means four. So let's count. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 sides and 4 angles, okay? So we know that. Now let's see why a rectangle is different from the trapezoid, the parallelogram, and the rhombus, okay? We want to know how are those different and why do they have different names, okay? So let's look. The first thing about a rectangle is opposite sides are equal. Now, when we were in the rhombus, all sides were equal, but now we're talking about opposite sides, the sides that are right across from each other, the left and the right and the top and the bottom, they are equal, okay? And then the other qualification to a rectangle is opposite sides are also what? What's that P word I use? Parallel, which means the lines would never cross. So we know 2 things already about the rectangle. Opposite sides are equal. Opposite sides are parallel. Now I know you're wondering, okay, how does that make it different from a parallelogram? Well, I'm going to tell you now. The difference between a rectangle and a parallelogram is rectangles have all right angles, okay? Now, I know you're like, what is a right angle? So look at these angles, okay? It has 4 angles, okay? When you look at these angles, you guys, they have what we call square angles. Whenever you have an angle that can make a perfect square, it's called a right angle, okay? Now, you'll learn a little later, maybe when, I don't know if it's 5th or 6th grade, that a right angle is equal to 90 degrees. So you can only be a right angle if it measures 90 degrees and it makes a square corner, okay? So the 3 things about a rectangle is opposite sides are equal, opposite sides are parallel, and we have all right angles, which means we have square angles, okay? Now let's get into our final quadrilateral, which is a square. We've been seeing squares since we were little kids, probably before we even entered school. We knew what a square was, okay? So a lot of times, I know a lot of you have probably heard a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square, okay? Why is that? Well, you're about to find out right now, okay? Now, let's look at this square. What do you notice about it? Well, I noticed that all sides are equal. So that's the first very important thing about a square. In a square, all 4 sides are equal, okay? It has 2 pairs of parallel lines, which means opposite sides are parallel. And it also has, what kind of angles did I just teach you about? That's correct. It has right angles, which means that the angles are square. They need to make a square, guys. So let's look. We have 4 sides, 4 right angles, opposite sides are parallel, and all sides are equal, which means that a square is the only regular quadrilateral. Do you remember what I said regular means? Regular means that all the sides and all the angles are equal. So if anybody ever asks you what is a regular quadrilateral, there's only one of them. It is a square. Now, if you remember, you looked at the rhombus and you're probably thinking, well, a rhombus has All sides equal. Why is a rhombus not a square? Can anybody guess why? Let's think about the angles. Are the angles right angles? No, they're not, okay? When you make a rhombus, they don't have to be right angles. They can be acute angles, obtuse angles, well, really acute, but they cannot be right angles to be a square, okay? So that's the difference between a square and a rhombus, okay? Let's wrap it up, okay? Today we talked about polygons. Remember what a polygon is. A polygon is a flat, closed figure with straight lines, okay? Remember, when we're talking about things like hearts, a heart is not a polygon. If you think about a heart, it has curves at the top. So a heart wouldn't be a polygon. A polygon would be a rectangle, square, triangle. Those are polygons, flat, closed with straight lines. We classify polygons by the number of sides and angles they have. And regular polygons are polygons where the sides and angles are equal. Today we classified triangles and quadrilaterals. Remember, triangles have 3 sides and 3 angles. Quadrilaterals have 4 sides and 4 angles. Can anybody remember the only regular quadrilateral? That's correct. It's a square. I hope you enjoyed my lesson today on polygons, triangles, and quadrilaterals. I'll see you next time.